Good afternoon, greater Philadelphia area. This is Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB-AM. I'm Tom Toole. He is not Sarah Tymon. He's Tim C's, and we both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Mainline, the number one RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And while Sarah's on vacation, we had Tim come in. We've got some incredible topics to talk about today. Moody's has downgraded U.S. credit. We're going to talk about what that means for the housing market. The Federal Reserve came out with a report about commissions and compensation since the NAR settlement just about 9 months ago. And there is a woman in Germantown that stole over 20 homes because of deed fraud. And we're going to talk about what to be careful for if you're a consumer in the marketplace. We're going to break it all down next. So if you get some value out of this or you like what you hear, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. And if you want to schedule a call with our team and talk to our experts about how we can help you avoid deed fraud, understand what the Moody's downgrade means, you can do that with the link in the comments. So, Tim, first of all, thank you for coming on. Tim, give everyone a little bit of background. I know you've been on the show before. Tell us, what you've been up to, what you did before real estate. Obviously, you're rocking and rolling now. Tim's sales records are outperforming, veterans for decades in the business. So give everyone a little bit of a peek into the life of Tim C's.
Too kind. Thank you. Awesome to be on here. Thanks for allowing me to come by. I hope Sarah's enjoying her vacation. So before I got into real estate, I was pretty much fresh out of college. I graduated in 2022 with a musical theater degree of all degrees. But I was going back and forth with a couple of sales jobs. I worked at the Kimmel Center downtown for a little bit on their customer service line. Was pretty cool for a little bit. I wanted a little bit more in my my life path and my career. Joined up with Tom Toole, and we're rocking and rolling. We're doing a pretty decent job, I'd say, compared to last year. Like you said, I think I'm right where I was at this time. My whole year last year is where I'm at right now this year, which is really
incredible.
Cool, which is really cool.
What do you attribute that to?
Running the place at work. Absolutely running the place at work. A lot of, time management skills, developing, how to, just keep on track with everything, making sure that, I'm following and rehearsing, quote unquote, all of the scripting, just practicing that out, making sure that it's, second nature. And that in and of itself, because I know exactly what to say, has built my confidence, and confidence sells.
Well, I love that you're talking about confidence, and it's not just knowing what to say; it's studying the market and knowing how to guide people. So, do you feel like your theater background really helped you with that? I mean, obviously, you had to memorize lines and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was a huge help. And also to that end, being able to pick up on body language and signs. Like if you were to say something, for example, and somebody made like a grimace face, you could be like, all right, well, maybe they didn't, like what I said there. Maybe I changed my tactics to kind of still veer them on the right path of, helping them make a great decision for themselves and their families, but, doing it in a way that's professional and is not going to hurt feelings, but also giving them the real data that they need to hear.
That's the difference between a good agent and a great agent. You give people the news they need to hear, not saying what you think they want to hear so you get hired to make them feel good. So great advice for all the real estate agents out there and all the consumers, because if you got an agent that's one of those yes men or just saying whatever you want, that's not going to help you. So speaking of, let's get into the topics here. And Tim's got a wealth of knowledge he's going to share. We saw this Moody's downgrade. So if you don't know what the Moody's downgrade means, Moody's is a credit rating service out of the UK, and they have these different tiers of credit ratings. So last week, they made a 1-notch downgrade in their 21-notch rating scale to reflect what they called the increase over more than a decade in government debt and interest payment ratios to levels that are significantly higher than similarly rated sovereigns, meaning other countries. And the U.S. credit was downgraded by 1 notch. And now there's kind of this reaction in the market. So, I mean, hearing this and, looking at some of the new policies that are in place here, what's your reaction to this Moody's downgrade? Is this something people should be concerned about, or should they be worried about it? Tell us more what you're thinking and what you're seeing in the marketplace.
I mean, I guess it really depends on like how in tune with the market you are. I don't think that this is going to affect realistically the everyday consumer, the
Hmm.
people who are just out there making a move because a life event happened, like they had,
Hmm.
a divorce, they're having kids, they're getting married, things like that. Those are going to still generate, a purchase of a home if you need to upsize, downsize, whatever it may be. So I don't think that your average everyday person is going to be too affected by this. Obviously, we'll see how everything plays out. I'm no expert on, I'm not an economist here, but
Sure.
it's going to affect the people who are more in tune with it and however they decide to react to it. But overall, I don't think it's going to affect anybody too much.
So that's a good, very calm reading of this, because there was a range of reactions that happened when this Moody's downgrade was announced last Friday. Some people suggested it might be politically motivated. We're not going to go there. Some talked about the timing and the challenges faced by the budget and the tax cuts that have been implemented by the new administration. And a lot of people argued the U.S. should not be directly compared to other sovereign nations. I think that actually has some relevancy here, but there are implications for the housing market. So, if you looked at in August 2023, Fitch downgraded the U.S. debt just before a key Federal Reserve meeting. And at that meeting, the Fed raised interest rates, pushing the 10-year yield towards 5%. So that was a reaction that's happened in the past. What's been happening with the economy and the Fed during the last two downgrades is probably more critical to the 10-year yield than it is to the downgrades themselves. I think the bond market's been pretty volatile. And
Sure.
when you look at this, I don't think it's going to really do much to interest rates. I mean, I think that's the big concern. Is it going to affect interest rates or not? And when you look at what's actually been going on in the marketplace, I don't think the market's really reacted that much differently. Rates were what, like 7 1/8 yesterday, maybe 7 1/4
Yeah.
on the high ends.
Yeah.
I didn't see much.
I haven't either. I mean, they've just kind of been hovering around that range. We've gotten a little bit higher in the last couple of days, but anything could happen to kind of have that jump. But we've been hovering within that 7 and like 6 3/4 range for pretty much the whole year at this point.
I totally agree. And what I'm seeing here is that we're probably more in a situation where the market's going to continue to be the market that we're in. I mean, what do you see happening later this year? I know a lot of people, they want to wait. They're worried about what the economy is going to mean. You hear this objection all the time, Tim. So what is your observation? Is the market going to dramatically change? Is this Moody's downgrade going to do anything to U.S. credit or affect the housing market at all?
I I really don't believe so. I think that the market is going to be probably realistically the same that it was last year, kind of just getting into a little bit of a healthier spot. Purchase application data is still positive
Hmm.
year over year, which is incredible. Where we're seeing, a lot more inventory, which means a lot more people are feeling more comfortable in this environment. So I think that we're seeing a more positive trend. I know that you were on a podcast with Danielle Hell not too long
Yep.
ago, and she was saying that we could kind of see rates maybe come down a little bit
Hmm.
more to that, closer to that 6% range, but we'll just have to wait and see. Nobody has a crystal ball. We just kind of have to keep on chugging along.
I agree. I don't see this affecting the market long term. And when you look at some of this analysis by Moody's, so they had the U.S. debt that hit 36.2 trillion last year. It's been rising sharply, but they noted that they talked about federal spending increasing and tax cuts brought in less revenue. So most federal spending, 73% of it last year, is on mandatory entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and interest on debt. And so when you look at what's actually being spent, a lot of these things are already baked into the budget. I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference. And unless taxation gets adjusted, and spending gets adjusted, the budget flexibility the U.S. has is going to be limited. And they're expecting that mandatory spending, including interest expense, to go to 78% by 2035. So I think that's probably more the problem than anything else, is a lot of these entitlement programs and the interest on U.S. debt. So when you look at the long term here, and I agree with you on Danielle Hale, a lot of other people are saying the same thing. Barbara Corcoran came out. So if you don't know Barbara Corcoran, you don't watch Shark Tank apparently, or you're living under a rock, but just Google her. And, she came out and said when things are uncertain, like the stock market, politics, and interest rates, sounds pretty relevant here.
Oh yeah.
Buyers hesitate before committing to a new home, and that makes uncertain markets the best time to buy. So, what's your reaction to her quote there that she came out with?
I think that's right on. I mean, everybody wants to be, everybody wants that, oh my gosh, I got ahead of the game. I had this really great deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other side of the coin is, that usually is during those uncertain times. So I think that there is some truth to that for sure.
Well, and when you look at it, it's also when some people kind of duck out of the market, right?
Right.
And there's always opportunity in the market. You just got to know how to find it, or find an agent that's going to help you find it. And when you see things like this, and then you look at what's going on, and we can chart this on a weekly basis. So if you look at just the MLS research from last year and the Bright MLS, they give us these weekly stats. Well, we're seeing that the number of showings decreased year over year through the end of April. Well, that gets me interested as a buyer, because that tells you there's going to be less competition. When you see markets that are uncertain, well, a lot of times the uncertainty, people don't know what to expect. But then what ends up happening is the market comes back up. Like, let's say the Fed makes a cut, and that spurs interest rates to go down, because we know they don't control that. Well, then you get everyone jumping back in at the same time. So you actually have more competition.
Well, then people feel like they missed the boat at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're stuck in this analysis paralysis where it's like, oh, do we want to make a decision? Yep. Do we want to make a decision? And there's, 6 people telling you one thing and another 6 telling you another thing. A lot of consumers, I would say, are pretty just confused. But if you're going to, do something, do a little bit of research, talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about, and have them guide you through it. Because although the time may be quote unquote uncertain, it could be a great opportunity for you and your family.
If you look back at history, these uncertain times actually do produce great buying opportunities. To give some perspective here, the change in number of showings from last year to this year to date, through April, and this is in Philadelphia, the 4 collar counties, and then parts of South Jersey and northern Delaware, they're down 7.1%. We've seen inventory grow 17, 18% year over year. So there's more homes, there's less competition. Yeah, there's some uncertainty, but I like that as a buyer, because rates are pretty much where they were last year. They haven't really changed too much.
Well, it's also at the average rate as where it's been like since they've started recording the rates. I mean, since 1940 to right now, I mean, that's the average is around like 7%, 7.2, I think, right?
Yeah, well, so 7.74 is the average since they started recording interest rates over the past 50 years. So we're well below that. So you're absolutely right. And that's really important. So what Barbara Corcoran goes on to say is that there's 3 signs to stop sitting on the sidelines and make a move. So one is when you can buy below market value. Now, I think that's a tall order to say you're going to buy below market value. Everyone wants a deal. How many times you heard someone say, I'm looking for a deal?
Oh, 9 times out of 10. Everybody's just like, oh, do you think we can get a deal on this? It's like, well, you got to check all of the surrounding factors that play into that, but it's a possibility.
And right now, to me, the deal is getting the home that you want, that you're going to live in for 5 years or more, that you can afford, that fits your family. And if it's that good of a deal, there are many real estate agents that will buy that before it even gets to the consumers, because they see it come across their desk. So you have to be careful there. But sometimes the best deals are in plain sight. So the home with elevated days on market, the home that's been chasing the market down. People are like, oh, it's overpriced. And now it's really stale. And so I would look for homes with elevated days on market. You're seeing that the number of homes nationally are up over 30% year over year in terms of active listings. It's the highest level since 2020. Pending sales are down nationally 3.2%. Now we're seeing a little bit of a different number here. In terms of sales, we're up 1.4% on closed sales year to date through the end of April. So that's all going to be regional and local. And Danielle Hale, again, just said that she said the more inventory means more room to negotiate. So I see that as if you find the right agent who can show you, here's the opportunity sitting in front of us, that can be really valuable. Have you used that play with any of your clients, Tim?
100%. Yes. I've helped a number of clients in that particular situation. More so when I first had gotten started, just because things were a little bit less, what's the word? They weren't as they were today. They were a little bit less, easygoing. But Another great strategy would be finding a home that needs, a bit of cosmetic work. Maybe it needs
Yes.
an updated kitchen. Maybe it needs to just have the carpets ripped up and new hardwood floor put in. That's another great opportunity for somebody to say, "Oh my gosh, well, we're
Hmm.
planning on staying here for, 6, 7, 8, however many years they plan on it. It's a great location, whatever, but it needs some love." You put that sweat equity into there and you're going to, really reap the benefits later on.
I love that. I think that's a great piece of advice as well. And this is another example of where these things are hiding in plain sight. They're right in front of you. And when you get an agent and all they're doing is sending you properties and waiting for you to call them, they're not going to be able to identify that. So that's a great way to identify. And this is just two of the many ways that you can identify opportunities sitting in plain sight. So that would be number one. The second is when sellers start to come back to the table or come back to the market. And we are absolutely seeing that through the first half of 2025. When you look back at like 21 or 22, sellers have their pick of offers. But in uncertain markets, some of these people who were very firm on price or were a little unrealistic, they come crawling back and they maybe, and I've had, maybe they turn away an offer, the first day they're on the market and they come back a few months later. That's someone that's going to help. It's going to come back to the market and be able to create deals. We just sold a home recently, and the person who bought it was on the market 78 days, which is about the norm at this price point. This was a pretty high priced property. They looked at it the first week it was on the market, and they kind of kept their eye on it. And then, the agent did a really nice job engaging and talking and staying in communication.
It's good.
And when you get in that situation, the deal looks a lot more appealing. Now, everyone had to kind of stretch a little bit, and that's to me when you get a really fair price. I'm seeing more and more of that. Have you seen any examples of sellers coming back to the table or coming back to the market rather than, thinking that it was still a 21 or 22 market?
Well, right. Yeah. I've seen a couple of different scenarios where we were looking out, this is such a perfect example. We were looking at a home, a client of mine. We're out in Conshohocken. It's been sitting on the market for well over, 2 or 3 months now at this point. But when we first went to see it, it was sitting on there for about 3 weeks, kind of early on. Seller, I guess, really wanted to stay firm on a price point that they needed to stay within. And my client was like, that's really pushing the budget for us. I don't think that we could do it if they're not willing to come down. Well, a month, 2 weeks later on, I get my client into a home. And funny enough, it's really funny you bring that up. Just 3 days ago, that agent reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you get it done at X price?" And I was like, "I'm really sorry. They already purchased them. I'm sorry." So you're absolutely seeing, sellers and agents coming back to, previous buyers who they may have stuck their nose up, when they, initially put an offer in that they could do. And, it's unfortunate, but you just gotta keep an open mind. You gotta make sure that you're staying the course, and eventually it'll get done.
Well, and it's also important for agents. That's what you talked about, tough conversations. Telling people, hey, I'm not clear we're going to get a better offer than this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and some agents are so afraid to say that because it's not what the seller wants to hear. And when you have that candor and you can back it up with data,
Yep.
and you have X amount of people have passed on the property. This is how many views we have online. This is what other homes are selling for. Like those three components in terms of marketing, in terms of activity you're seeing, and relevant sales data, then it becomes a lot easier because you're educating with data and you're also letting them know, hey, this could be a mistake. And that has helped a lot of my clients in the past, a lot of the team's clients, and I know a lot of yours, avoid that mistake because sometimes the first offer is the best offer.
Oh yeah, we experienced that this past weekend with another client of mine. They came in. I was a seller I was working with. We had an offer come in over the weekend. It was everything that they wanted for. There were a couple of people who said, "Oh, we might have something coming," but the sellers were like, "This is everything that we want. It's a little bit above. I think we're gonna go for it." And I was like, "All right, whatever you guys say. This is your home."
Well, and see, that's where the difference between a good agent and a great agent is really important, because if you don't have that conversation, that goes away. You're on the market under 2, 3, 4 weeks. Even if you get the same offer, there's likely a carrying cost there. There's likely cash that's going out the door. So that's really, that's this is tough right now for a lot of agents, especially because we know what the turnover is in real estate. So 87% of agents are gone every 5 years. 5 years ago was 2020. So a lot of these agents got in, and this is just what the stats say.
The market was hot.
Well, it was so hot they didn't have to do anything. This home's going to sell itself, which is something you never want to say. And they don't know how to have these tough conversations with sellers, and they just avoid them, or they're like, these people are unrealistic. Well, I got some news for all those people. That's how the market was before that, and a lot of these people are out of the business right now. So that's sign number two, and sign number three that's really important here is when the market feels a little eerie or spooky, and when the market's uncertain. It's a signal that you should be out there buying property. In an uncertain economic and political market, there's great deals to be had. You just have to get off your butt and make an offer. And what she's really saying is that hesitation can kill deals. And I'm a big believer in this, that time can be the enemy. Overpaying isn't overpaying if you know what you want. The home may have more value to you and your fiance, Tim, than it may have to somebody else because maybe you have like a relative down the street or there's family that's close. So or
in between work.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many variables there, and time does kill sales. And I look back at some of the real estate I've purchased. Could I have got maybe a little better price? Possibly, but I got the house. I got what I wanted, and I got what my family wanted. And you can't regret that stuff because there's intrinsic value there. It's not always about dollars and cents. And it's got to be about if it's working for your household, if you can afford the payment, and if you're going to be there more than 5 years. And that tends to be the magic formula.
Well, Barbara Corcoran said it right, too. She says, I've overpaid for almost every piece of property I've bought. If I like it, I buy it. If I don't, then, I live to regret it. Or then she says, I don't live to regret it. Pardon me.
Have you ever had the client that's like, man, I should have made an offer on that property? It happens all the time. So this is really great advice. And that's where, a lot of people, they say things like, I don't want to waste your time, Tim, and look at these homes. I'm not sure. And I'm a big believer the first time you take somebody out, or maybe the second time or early in that search process, you want to show them like 4 or 5 homes the first shot.
Yep.
Because even if all 4 suck, they have a better perspective to go, all right, this next one looks pretty good. But so many people, they don't want to go out. They're hesitant. And a lot of times they're hesitant because they think agents are going to try to sell them something instead of just educate them about the market.
Sure. Well, you get a lot of that. That's why 87% of agents are are out.
Club 13 all day. That's how we roll with our team. So a couple key indicators here, and then we'll kind of take a quick break. So you're looking at this Moody's downgrade. You're hearing what Barbara Corcoran's saying. We also got to look at what's happened to inventory and prices. So right now, just to give some perspective, 83% of markets are still seeing home price increases. So I would not get into this mindset that prices are coming down. What has happened is the price increases have not softened, but they've slowed. Like you're not seeing 10% year over year appreciation like you did 20 to 21. That's unheard of. It's maybe 2 or 3%, which is very healthy for the market.
Agreed.
And it's a weaker increase in terms of the rate of the increase, but it's not weaker prices. And there's some markets that are down for sure. I mean, places like Florida, Texas, they have a saturation of what's going on in the market. There's been, some natural disasters that have happened there. Mm-hmm. For all our friends listening in the Philadelphia area, we're seeing right now 3.4% year over year price growth through the month of March. That's March 24 to March 25, which is very healthy. You compare that to March 23 to 24, that was 7.9%. So 7.9 is the unsustainable number. 3.4, that's a very normal number. You're getting that kind of price growth year over year. That's a very stable market.
Right. Well, that's also the 7% or even 10%. That's the percentage where it's just like, man, I feel like I can't afford anything. And obviously you want your asset to grow in value for sure over time. But if you're looking to just jump in, it's tough to do it at that point. So at a pace like this that we're at now, it's a lot more healthy. It's a lot more doable for your average everyday consumer to say, all right, well, and they know that it's not unattainable, which is for sure, which is certainly good.
The other key stat here that we want to keep an eye on, then we'll take a break here and we'll talk about this Fed commissions report, is that we're also seeing inventory grow. I don't want to gloss over this because a lot of people, think about how many agents you've heard. If there was only more inventory, I'd be selling all these houses. And you know what? Most of them don't sell more houses when there's more inventory because they don't know what to do. But if you look at what's happening with inventory, and again, this is a very regional thing. So you look at what's happened from April 2019 to April 2025, we're still seeing less homes on the market in the greater Philadelphia area. But then if you look at where we were, and then there's this chart here. We I don't know if Nick can probably put it together for us on the post edit, where it shows where inventory is year over year. We're up 17, 18.2%, depending on where you are. And we're seeing the most homes on the market nationally than we've seen since 2020. So
that's incredible.
And it was just so low. It was a lot of people called it savagely unhealthy. Logan Modeshami's talked about that, where that's why you saw that 7, 8, 9, 10% price growth. So if you're looking for signals about, Barbara Corcoran saying it's a good time to buy, which makes sense from what she's talking about there. And I'm not a big believer in saying like it's a good time to buy. Like
it's always a good time.
Yeah, well, there's agents that say that there could be, the house could be on fire, and they say it's a good time to buy the home. So this is an opportunity that's in front of us right now. I would imagine we get to the fall here. I think things may ramp back up, especially if rates come back down. We'll have to see all that plays out. It's really just about education. So what are you doing to educate folks right now? You meet someone for the first time. What kind of data are you showing them, and what are you saying to them, Tim, before we take a quick break?
Yeah, certainly. So just letting them know that, like, hey, this is a big purchase. Don't worry. I'm, going to be with you every step of the way. Just kind of reassuring them that they're not alone on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, is just giving them the market stats, letting them know that, like, this is a pretty good spot. We're seeing a lot more inventory that we've seen. That means a lot more options for you as the consumer. You're not going to have as tough of a time. And the good news is, when a lot of people feel that it's, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, it's just like we were speaking about. There's opportunity for you guys if you are ready to go. And there's no rush on my end, just reassuring them that as well. I mean, we want you to get into the home that's going to be right for you and your household, not, just the first one out there. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I want to help you, on your way to make a great decision. So those are some things. Reassurance, giving them some market data, and just talking them through the process. 9 out of 10 people have no idea how to go through a real estate purchase. Most likely, it's a huge thing. But yeah.
Well, if you look at the average tenure, even the people that bought a home before, it's gone from 7 years to over 11 years of home ownership in one property. So think about what you were doing 11 years ago. Right? Boy. 11 years ago was what, 2014? I mean,
I was graduating grade school.
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? But there's also, 11 years ago, the market didn't move as fast as it did. You didn't have some of these challenges that you have now. There was a lot of inventory on the market in 2014. So these are all things you got to really understand, and that's all the more reason to find someone that's going to educate you on what's actually happening, not just getting you into a home and moving at some ridiculously quick speed. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the federal report about commissions and compensation next on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. Welcome back to Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. He's Tim C's, filling in for Toole Time stalwart Sarah Tymon. She's been here since the original show. Very grateful for her. She's having a great time down in North Carolina. So we're going to be talking about the Federal Reserve report about real estate commissions and compensation and what's happened since the NAR settlement in August. And there's a woman in Germantown that stole over 20 homes. And we're going to talk to consumers about what you should be mindful of dealing with a lot of these private sales. There's a lot more risk involved than people think. We've got a lot of case studies that prove that. So if you get some value out of this or you like what you hear, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. And if you want to schedule a call with Tim and our team, Tim is helping a whole bunch of people right now. You can do that with the link in the comments. He can help you navigate all of this stuff, as well as the Moody's downgrade we just talked about. So this Federal Reserve report just came out, and it was there was a $418 million antitrust settlement in March of 2024, and then all the new rules got enacted in August, and it sent a lot of shockwaves through the real estate industry. A lot of people, I mean, you were in the rooms. I mean, people were freaking the F out about this stuff. I mean, what was the reaction? I mean, when you heard this, I mean, you've been in the business at that point, not very long.
A couple of months.
Yeah. So what was your reaction when you heard the settlement and then some of the new rules that were coming out?
Offhand, just to start out, I was just like, oh no, what do I do? This, because I didn't know any better. I was coming in from a completely different, standpoint, not being in the business for years and years and years like a lot of these folks were. So I was just like, oh gosh, am I going to be able to get paid? But kind of diving a little bit deeper and reading up on it and going to more of the, trainings to talk about it, was just like, oh, this has always kind of been the case. Commission has always been negotiable. We're just putting it out there in the forefront to make it more transparent, which it should have been anyway.
I agree with that. And I think, the biggest concern that most people had was about getting agreement signed before they would show a house.
Right.
I find that the people that weren't able to do that were the ones that were lazy and didn't have any skills and didn't know how to talk to people, and they were just winning on personality. And they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna make them like me, not anything skill based." I mean, is that your assessment there? You've been doing this long enough to know.
I would say so. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no there's no shortage of those personality winners over there.
I think they're called the know-it-alls, Tim. That's what they're called. So
we strive to be titans here.
Yes. So if you don't know what we're talking about, there's really like 4 groups of real estate agents out there. There's the people that wing it. They don't follow any scripts or plan. They, and sometimes they do okay. Other times they don't, but they're flying by the seat of their pants. Then you got the dabbler who doesn't commit to anything. They try everything once. So they do one video. They do one social media post. They send out one email. They make one phone call, right? I mean, and then they get frustrated it doesn't work. And then you've got the know-it-all who has early success in their career, and that leads to an inflated ego, and then they just stop learning and doing anything and think they know it all. And end up they have a lot of bad habits that can hurt consumers and just aren't a good way to talk to people. And then there's the Titan who tries to get better every day. They have consistent business coming in month after month, and they're always studying and doing things to improve, like role play, like practicing their scripts, like reading about the market. So, Tim absolutely falls into that category. There's no question there. That's why he's outperforming probably 97% of agents right now in the country. So with that in mind, you got this mindset, right? People are freaking out. Well, I think a lot of people were worried, I'm going to be put out of business. I think that was a legitimate fear. And the new report from the Federal Reserve, it sheds light on what's actually happening with compensation across the U.S. CoreLogic has a massive data set, and apparently this report tracks buyer agent compensation over 3 decades. It dives into policy changes, rebate bands, it breaks down how rates can vary by region and home price, which is real. I think there's some places that have higher and lower compensation rates. And there was 5 takeaways. The first one is that commission rates are declining, but slowly. In 2002, most listings offered exactly 3% to buyer's agents. By 2022, more offered out 2.5 or 2, even though 3 was still the most frequent rate, showing commissions are negotiable, by the way.
Yes,
so does that surprise you that we're not seeing commissions decline that much?
To be honest, no. No, it doesn't surprise me, because if you're bringing value to your client and you're bringing value to the table, then you're going to work for that. You're going to work for that. People want valuable things, cost a little bit more money. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes there. But if you're not bringing value and you're also not, doing the things you're supposed to do, then you're going to shoot for the bottom and you're just going to play it by ear, or not play it by ear, but you know what I
mean? What you're going to do is that you're, when that happens, we did this on a role play today. I don't know if you were on there so instead of offering options to people, some people just spit out a number, and then there's not, that's not really a good way to talk to clients in general, in my view. I think you want to give people options and say, hey, great, like let's focus on what's most important, which is the relationship here.
Right.
Let's figure out a way for it to make it work. So I'm not surprised either. However, you're going to see things decline. One, because prices have gone up so much, right? I mean, that's going to level out based on some things. Secondly, the reason you're going to see a slow decline is because there's going to be some people that are worth more than others.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's attorneys that charge higher rates than other attorneys. And then you got LegalZoom. That's like the MLS placement listing, right? Like you do it all yourself. So it's not going to be a uniform thing. And there are many people that are willing to pay more for great representation. I'd rather pay a good accountant a little more to make sure I don't get audited, or when I do get audited, I survive the audit and it goes well, than someone who doesn't know what they're doing. So that doesn't surprise me either, because there's a lot of people that took this seriously. So I think that's a great point. And then there's some folks that just roll over because they're weak on skills and they're just worried about trying to grab whatever they can.
Well, they get stuck in the commission breath, and you're
Sure.
not bringing any type of value. You're just hunting for the next paycheck. But it's like they've hired you to help them with a huge purchase. You know.
I mean, I take that personally, and I don't think a lot of agents do. I mean, it's, when I see bad representation, it's something that, rubs me the wrong way. So, and I know you're right in the same boat.
Yeah.
That's probably why we get along and work together so well. So that's takeaway number one. The second is that commission and compensation rates are splintered by region, and this does not surprise me. They found that high cost markets like California, the Northeast, and the Pacific Northwest tend to offer lower compensation rates, in contrast to lower price states like Kansas, Mississippi, and Alabama that are having a little higher rates. And then in places like New York City, there's even a lower number. So does that surprise you that you're seeing things change by market?
I'm going to say no again. Yeah. I mean, especially like you're seeing in New York City, I'm sure it costs 10 times more to buy a single family home in New York City than it does in, Kansas or Mississippi. So that would make sense if you're going to be, the commission rate is going to reflect where the area is. But yeah, if you're getting your value, you should get all the apples you want.
I could not agree more. Takeaway number 3. Zillow didn't kill commissions. So even with a lot of the buyer side transparency from Zillow and Redfin, according to the Fed report, they said that low compensation offerings underperform. They sit longer and are less likely to sell. And whether we believe it or not, brokerages steer clients towards full compensation listings, making it harder for discount brokers to compete. Do you feel like that's accurate?
I don't know about the second one.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like, if you're doing that was the whole point of the lawsuit, was it not? To avoid steering?
Well, I think that, that was part of it, for sure. And, to me, and this is why the offer of compensation, I like that it's taken off the MLS, because good agents aren't even asking before they show properties. They show properties to see if there's a deal to be made. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't have the time. If I'm showing 5 or 6 homes, I don't have the time to call these 6 people. They probably don't have a good communication system like we've developed to put this out there. And then you got to get a call back from a real estate agent. Good luck, because that's one of the biggest challenges that are out there.
Tough.
And what we've seen is that and we've tested this. We've had some sellers that said, hey, we're not paying, period. All those homes sold.
Yep.
And they worked it out. We have some that said, hey, we're open-minded to it. Why don't you write it in the offer? All those homes sold. And it was maybe a little more, or sometimes a little less than what they thought they have to pay. It varies. And the ones that are offering it out, I mean, that really hasn't been a problem. I think it's actually a good thing we're not seeing those offerings, because it just makes it a lot easier. And I think it really confirms that transparency matters, but perceived value and industry norms does drive behavior. I mean, I think, some agents are expecting some form of compensation. I don't blame them. They're doing work.
Right.
Next one here, and this is what we talked about: buyer representation agreements and banned commission rebates haven't created a major change. Does that surprise you?
No.
You want to elaborate on that, or
Well, I'm kind of looking at it here. If the buyer agreements, Pennsylvania is one of the states with buyer agreements in place beforehand, right?
Yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania has had that. Now, I think when they get them signed is what's changed a lot. I mean, some people wouldn't, necessarily wouldn't sign one at the first meeting.
Right.
We'd get it signed later, but you'd obviously have to give a consumer notice and certain things when you meet someone at the beginning, which, we've always done.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think that there was any significant dent in that. It just goes back to, if you're presenting value, you're going to fight for that value, and you're, going to be worth more.
I agree. And I mean, again, I've worked with some pretty sophisticated people, trial attorneys since this happened. They said, okay, well, here's what we want to do. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, yeah, let's move ahead. Let's get the home sold. And when you focus on that, I think it eliminates a lot of these challenges. The agents that come in and they start verbal diarrhea on, oh, here's all the changes, and like, you lost me. You know what I care about as a consumer? Moving, pricing, like where I'm going to, timing, all the stuff we talk about.
Right. And you want to address it too. Just like, has anyone taken the time to sit down and like explain everything to you? Like, that's really important. You got to make sure that everybody is aware of the situations that's happening so that they who are making the purchase make a good decision.
That line again, has anyone taken the time to explain blank,
Right.
whatever it is? If you use that piece of scripting, what it's going to show is, one, I know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Two, most agents are just trying to meet you, and they don't explain things. They don't talk to you like a I mean, anytime I've had like a legal encounter, whether it's like getting my estate documents done or something like that, has anyone taken the time to explain to you how this works? That's one of the questions I get from the attorneys that I've used. And estate docs aren't that complicated. It's not anything crazy, but it makes me feel better that, all right, this is what we're talking about. And then they can explain it in ways I can understand versus like the real estate jargon.
Well, if someone doesn't know what that is at all, it's going to be a bit tougher.
For sure. And then the last takeaway here is that the Fed believes the full effect of the settlement will take time to play out. I do agree with this one. I think there's a lot of things that may happen because, I mean, there's always like these appeals and these other lawsuits that happen. If I'm an agent, I wouldn't be thinking we're out of the woods here yet. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a couple of years for everything to get really played out. I think that there's been a lot of back and forth just within the industry. I think we're seeing a lot of different business models kind of come up from this that are being tried out, and all for that. If you're going to do it the right way, go for it. But I mean, I agree. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for this to play out. Give it a couple more years, but we'll see.
Yep, I'm right there with you. So we've got this report, and it's been 9 months now. Then there's the question of what buyers and sellers actually want. I want to spend a minute on each one of these. So when you think of what sellers want, and Tim, you did a nice job talking about, like, it's about the initial meeting and educating folks. So when you see what sellers want, well, what sellers want, and let me get to the right page here. So this is a 131-page report, so just bear with me.
Boy.
124, that's what we want. I see I index this so I could actually look this up. We'd be here all day.
Proper preparation.
Well, so what sellers actually want, if you look at the NAR report, is they want help marketing the home to potential buyers. That's 22%.
Totally.
20% is pricing the home competitively. That doesn't mean get the best price. It means get it, competitively priced to be one of the next to sell. Help them sell within a specific time frame is 18%. So you have these three things here. That's basically 60% is pricing, marketing, timing, and then home prep is the next one. And then you have help find a buyer for the home, which to me is part of marketing. So you could really roll that in. So 35% of sellers want help marketing. Then the next three most important things are pricing the home competitively, hitting their time frame, and what to do to get the home ready for the market. And then you get like negotiating and dealing with buyers and paperwork and inspections. Those are all single-digit numbers.
Sure.
Seeing that, does that make you want to alter or adjust your approach to talking to sellers?
Not mine. No.
Okay.
Maybe others would. Well, I mean, if you're going to be like, if you're talking to a seller and you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm the best at negotiating, we're going to get you a great deal here. I'm going to help you with all the paperwork and inspections. Like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of expected that you're going to want to do that. And it's great that you're good at that. But, we want to make sure that our home's getting the most exposure. So I think that absolutely, falls into that. I wouldn't change how I would market or do. I wouldn't change how I speak to sellers because I'm doing those three things, making sure that they understand what the market is going through right now. Making sure that we're talking about the three different strategies of, pricing the home. And then making sure that we're, staying within their time frame so that it's going to be as smooth and as easy as a process as it can be for them.
And what you're not seeing on here is I'm concerned about commission or the lowest commission rate. Right. That's what a lot of people don't get. Look at home buyers, and we'll make this one quick. It's at 49 or 50%. They want help finding the home. So again, it's all about what buyers want and what sellers want. When you focus on that and you focus on education at the initial meeting, that's going to help you to earn whatever you feel you're worth. And the better job you do, the more you can charge. And people are willing to pay it based on this Federal Reserve report. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to spend a couple minutes about this Germantown woman stealing 20-plus homes next on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. All right. We are back on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. He's Tim Sees. We both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group, the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we've got this story about a Germantown woman who stole over 20 homes using deed fraud, and some notary questionable things. I mean, the whole thing is wild. So Gwendolyn Shell, she's 67 years old, allegedly faked signatures and backdated contracts as part of a conspiracy that lasted nearly a decade, according to the Philadelphia DA's office. And to give you an idea, and I'm going to get your reaction to this, Tim, a notary public's a state-appointed official who acts as a witness to the signing of important documents. So you got to have some credentials here. The assistant DA, Kimberly Esack, said the case against Shell was unusual because the defendant allegedly, I think she did this, but allegedly used her position as a notary public to disguise the fraud. And what went on to happen here is that there were stolen homes where the findings of the Department of Records that happened. There was a map of 21 properties involved in an investigation into Shell and her co-conspirators who have charges pending. And basically, there was, she faked the documents.
Yikes.
And when I hear this stuff, I mean, it just makes me nervous about private sales for consumers, because a lot of consumers, you said it, they don't know anything about transactions here. So whatever happens with this case, I mean, I'm not so concerned about that. What are some of the things consumers should look out for when they deal with private sales, cash for keys, cash offers, quick settlement? This is all the stuff that investors and wholesalers, market. What are you concerned about there? What are some of the red flags for consumers that you see?
Well, can almost guarantee you that they're not talking them through why getting different types of title insurance is super important, and then talking them through these are a couple of my trusted, people that we work with. They're going to make sure you're going to get a free and clear marketable title that's going to be clear of all liens or judgments. So that's certainly one thing to be aware of there. That's a huge issue, because if that's not clear, then you're then taking on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen this happen with private sales, where even if it's an arm's length transaction, they skip getting title insurance because it's going to save them a few $1,000s. I had a home, we sold it. We were going to settlement. First title company misses it, and the deal fell apart for another reason. We sell it again. This home's in Gladwin, by the way.
Oh, my goodness.
And there's a church next door that owned a piece of the driveway that did not give them an egress, and they could not sell the property.
Oh, wow.
So I spent, and, forget my time, which was hard. I mean, we sold this home twice. All this goes on because they didn't get title insurance. And so that's one of the things that you got to be very mindful of. And you don't have to get title insurance if you're a cash buyer. It's not required. I don't recommend it ever.
No.
This is a great example. The other thing that concerns me as we're getting played out here is you get a lot of these cash for keys and wholesalers. I would be very careful about what you can actually get for the home. I would consult a professional before you do anything. What's the retail number on the market? What's the cash quick sale that an investor may purchase? That may be a better option for people. I'm not anti-investor. We all work with investors. Get some different opinions before you do something like this, because next thing you know, your property's getting stolen. We had this happen with the settlement with an agent that you and I both know. I'm not going to put their name on the air here, where the fraudulent seller was trying to sell the property. The whole thing got canceled. The woman at the title company got fired because of it.
My goodness. That's scary stuff.
Do your investigation. Talk to a professional like Tim. Tim, where can people follow you on Instagram? What's your handle there?
It's TIM_SEES.
All right, so Tim's on Instagram, Tim_Sees. You can follow me at Tom Toole 3RD, at Tom Toole 3rd. And we'll be back next week on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.